Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. I'm one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. I am not shocked that it is taking us 2 days to get through discussing the House case and the implications coming from it. But Blake, I'm also excited, though, because I'm going to take a nice little vacation at the end of the week.
Yes, you're taking a vacation when, you know, it's ironic that I might have needed you to take it the most because LSU baseball's in Omaha.
So how long does that stretch for? How does that?
It could stretch to the end of the month, really. But I mean, they start next week, or they start on Friday, which you'll be gone. Okay.
Right. Okay, that's good.
You know, if they go on a run, then, you know, the games normally start at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So, I mean, it's not like we couldn't go live earlier in the day, which we certainly can now. Like, we remember the last time Paul Skeens completely messed up Ruffino and Joe show.
Oh, it made it impossible to do. I didn't even register this, and I know that LSU didn't make it last year, so I unintentionally set up the vacation with good timing.
Perfect timing, and it's good to get that last vacation in right before.
Right.
You know, we got SEC Media Days, Big Ten Media Days, and Joe, again, football is right around the corner, so we'll get into that. So, Joe, there are a lot of big things that we got to get here to today, but the first is probably the biggest. Has private equity within a 48-hour span of the House settlement case finally made it into college sports? Now, there was a report out there by Scorpio, which Penn State and UCLA did. What did I say? Scorpio?
Yeah, Sportico is the
Sportico. Sorry, not whatever. Penn State and UCLA denied that they signed an 8-figure capital deal with Elevate, a company who also represents Alabama, Notre Dame, and Florida as well. Joe, it seems like the Sharks are circling around not really just college athletics, but really college football. By the way, the company Elevate said that they had set aside $500 million investment for capital investment into college sports.
This whole saga in like a 2-hour span, 3-hour span has been kind of funny to watch because of the headline being generated and then the aggressive response by both UCLA, Penn State, and by Elevate to clarify what the relationship was. I'm excited to get into this because I didn't think that we were going to have private equity starting to lurk this quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't end up seeing in like the next month, if we don't end up seeing a major deal, an actual signing of an institution with one of these private equity firms. It sounds like there's a lot of companies that are building funds in order to sign schools to give them money to generate revenue in order to be able to pay their players more and then therefore make more money in addition to that.
Well, if you're getting $10 million hypothetically per year from a company, Joe, they don't have to take their TV revenue and give it to football, right? Like they're just having to pay TV revenue money. If you remember the House settlement case, Ross Dellinger reported, it doesn't matter how they pay them, they just have to. So basically, here's my thing. I understand the private equity part, but let me ask you this. So let's say allegedly that Penn State and UCLA did sign an 8-figure deal with a company and private equity to fund college athletics. How does that give them control of what goes overall with the athletic department? So I would wonder how that is ventured, right? Like, what is their ultimate goal? They can't own the athletic department. Now, they certainly can cut through deals. They can certainly not give money. I mean, there's certainly a lot of things that they can do. And I'm not saying that there's nothing that they can't do. But if you're giving that level of money, wouldn't you want some form of control?
Well, I kind of think it would be like, if I am no private equity expert, nor am I a business expert, but I feel like it would kind of be like with a startup. If money is invested, they would have a board seat, they would have decision making, they would have the ability to weigh in on key massive decisions. But for the most part, I think that these schools would still operate the way that they would. It's just now some of the money that they're making goes towards the schools. So I think here's a really random thought that immediately comes to my head. I was reading a couple of these stories about this, and North Carolina was brought up as a school that had looked into it but didn't end up pursuing it, but was talking to some private equity firms, I bet you if they had taken money and the Jordan Hudson stuff was happening when it did, that probably would have gotten shut down a lot quicker and a lot more swiftly, and it would have been a lot more quiet than it was. There wouldn't be rampant nonsense happening the way that it had happened around North Carolina. Look at pro sports, headlines like that get shut down immediately, and then there's immediate involvement from HR and all these other departments that prevents anything like that from turning into a circus. So, like, I think that where private equity would be involved is that if there is a decision or if there is a commotion happening, they would immediately step in and they would try and find ways to problem solve it.
I don't want to get in the weeds. My thought was, when you were saying all that, what big decisions? Like coaching decisions?
Well, yeah, I would bet that coaching decisions, personnel, staff decisions. I don't think that they would get involved in scouting or player acquisition decisions. Like, I feel like that would be kind of ridiculous, but signing sponsorship deals, like all of those things would be the types of decisions I would assume a private equity firm would have say in and would want to sway those decisions.
So listen, here's the big thing that caught my eye in all of this. The thing that caught my eye the most is very simple. Joe, we have a company that admitted to putting out $500 million of their own money. That, Joe, the, companies aren't just sitting in the bank. They're not just keeping that level of money in the bank just because. Right? Like they're not just leaving that there. I think the bigger thing in all of this is that we have venture capitalists that are out here confirming that they're circling the waters. Regardless if Penn State or UCLA signed this deal or they didn't sign the deal, doesn't mean two Rudy Poos to me. What really is the big deal is I think we're at the start of something here that could really, really hurt college football more than anything, because that's what people are really wanting to get their hands on.
I think, and I am not advocating for private equity. I need to be very clear here. I think that there is some positive that can come from an injection of funds into a school. I think that there can be. Having more money to spend in a moment of uncertainty. And then also one of the things that gets brought up is that these private equity firms would provide consulting and would provide, help in navigating these changes and all that. That stuff can be useful. But anyone who knows anything about business and who pays anything attention to specific markets, the minute that companies are bought up by private equity, it turns into a complete mess. And not a mess in the sense that it gets completely falls off the rails and it's uncontrollable. They will strip it down into a position where it will make the most possible money. Private equity, putting a stake into a program, an athletic program, a big athletic program, is not with the intention of winning football games. It is with the intention of them making money. So they're going to do just the bare minimum enough for a team to go 10-2 to go to the college football playoff, and they don't care what happens after that. They don't care. They're not going to care if there's results on the field. They're going to care if they made money that year. That is what is going to be the outcome. And that's why we talk about private equity being bad. Anytime you see a company that you love that is bought by private equity, or your own company that you maybe worked for, you have seen the wreckage that they create and the path that they blaze behind them by tearing everything apart in order to make it into a money-making machine.
Joe, why do I feel like that we're having a conversation in the start of something that's going to change college football forever?
Well, because it will. It absolutely will.
Here's my thing. If there is going to be an executive order or there's going to be legislation passed, I do hope in that legislation that is passed that something's in there that private equity can't purchase teams, or they can't have above, let's just say, 5% equity in a team.
But like, if there is legislation, on what grounds is that something that could be made?
Yeah, so the
legal?
grounds, the grounds would be that you can't buy state property.
Well,
Like, for example, like
okay.
LSU is owned by the state. You can't buy the state. You can't buy equity into the state. Now, you can in certain other ways, but Joe, here's the part in this that I want to throw in there. When you buy into something, you also take on its debt. So when you do that, I don't want to see like a billionaire come in here and buy a college. I don't want to see that. Right? Like
I don't think that they would buy the college though, but we've already had, I think it was Kentucky was one of them that spun their athletic department off into an LLC in order to probably set it up in order to be, have a stake of it purchased.
Which very likely can happen. I mean, man, I don't like this. I don't like it at all. I think it sets up for a lot of really bad things. The collective bargaining should, if there ever is one, should prevent this. Because here's the thing too. You know what else you open yourself up to that you don't do in the draft or in the NFL? Arthur Blank can't write a check to anybody he wants coming into the draft. He can't get his own pick, meaning he gets his own pick, but it's in an order based off a collective bargaining agreement. In recruiting, Joe, if a billionaire wants to make money, he's got to have superstars to make money. No one makes money in business without superstars. They don't. So what kind of backdoor dealings happen then? Who funds NIL then? And then here becomes a bigger thing. Let me give you a hypothetical of what I thought about all day. Let's say Larry Ellison buys majority stock in Michigan, hypothetically, and he puts Oracle instead of San Francisco or wherever they are in the Bay, instead of having the Oracle Arena, what if on the field it's Oracle Field in Michigan?
That's one of the things that's been brought up a lot is branding being on the jerseys and all over the fields.
So stay with me here.
Okay.
If he needs a quarterback to start making his money back, he's got to give fair market value NIL deals through Oracle. What's a fair market? We get back to the house settlement case again here. You see where I'm going with this? So it might be good for schools right now, and you say it won't trickle into recruiting. And I got to be honest with you, I call bullshit because the way to go 10-2, the way to make the money, Joe, could you imagine? Let's say Larry Ellison had this guy behind me. For everybody on audio, I'm pointing at Burrow. How much cash gets thrown for them for fair market value NIL? You're setting yourself up for massive issues in a recruiting where it can't happen in other sports because it's not recruiting, it's a draft. And then you have free agency that's based off of a cap and a market value, which, by the way, the NFL market value gets reset every 4 years. Every 4 years, and maybe you can make an argument every 2 years, it gets reset. So
that market value, though, I would argue that's how you determine fair market value, is that if a deal is a little bit, just like in the NFL, we will never see, no team will ever take a $50 million contract that's given to a quarterback. I don't know what the highest paid quarterback is off the top of my head. They're never going to double that and give him $100 million to the next guy. It's always incrementally a little bit more than the last player that was the highest paid.
Cleveland Browns say hello.
No, Deshaun Watson's contract was still, it was
$75 million in guaranteed money, was it not?
It was, but his annual, and talking about like his annual salary, like his annual number was still within range of what the next highest quarterback was making.
Guaranteed money that happened after that. Like,
but nobody like doubled. Nobody's making double of what another quarterback is making in the NFL right now.
I mean, Patrick Mahomes got an extension with $110 million of guaranteed money.
But that was the length, not the. That's the entire contract. I'm talking about like a year by year basis.
Yeah,
so
but the year by year, it does that matter though? Because it keeps getting reset, is what I'm saying. Like regardless of the money part of it, it keeps getting reset.
It does get reset, but what I'm saying is that the determination of fair market value, these guys are only going to be in school for 4 or 5 years. So there's a maximum amount of time that a contract can be for. meets for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. It can't be any more than that. That would be the clearest red flag, is if Oracle tried to sign a kid to a 10-year contract. That's BS. They can't do that. I'm sure somebody will probably try to.
No, I'm not saying.
No, wait. Can I finish what I'm saying? The point is that in the NFL, whenever somebody resets the market for a specific position, it's always incrementally more than what the highest paid person is per annual salary.
Sure. But you can't convince me that Larry Ellison doesn't say that there's fair market value for Bryce Underwood. And if they tell him no, that he doesn't have the money to sue because he's trying to recoup the $500 million that he's giving to the school.
I just don't think that it'll enter a situation that he will offer so much money that it will raise a red flag to the College Sports Commission that they will say no to it.
So the kid got $12 million guaranteed this year. And that's the deal. Basically what they're saying, he's a $2.5 to $3 million a year quarterback.
That is what all of the top quarterbacks are making in college football. $2 to $3 million. That's what everyone assumes.
Sure. But he also won out in a recruiting battle with a kid that never took a snap. The deals that you're talking about are for instances where kids have already played. You're talking about Klubnik, Nussmeier, Blagway, etc. Whoever the guys will be that are making that level of money. He's never taken a snap. He won a recruiting battle based off of him paying a kid a ridiculous sum of money.
That's true. That is true.
You just can't convince me that a private equity firm that would want to see money back in success, that they wouldn't want a superstar and give a kid an NIL deal that would not prevent him from going to that school. They can say that they're going to do that, but Joe, there's no way around that, in my opinion.
Okay,
if
but
talk about his NIL, Joe, whether we like it or not.
The difference is now, though, is that there is a portion of the revenue share that is allotted towards paying a specific player. So they've got their $20 million to work with. There is going to be money in a contract negotiation. That has nothing to do with NIL. That is not NIL. Revenue sharing money. The school could theoretically give all $20 million to one player if they wanted to. There's no restriction there that says that they can't do it. Private equity, I don't think, is going to have an involvement in using NIL to induce, unless they have some sort of deal already set up with a business that's associated with the school.
No, Elevate is a business. If Elevate bought it, hypothetically, if they gave, just hypothetically,
that athlete would have to promote Elevate if they did that.
Okay, no one's disagreeing with that. But if they want their money back, do you fully believe that they wouldn't help the school that they're sponsoring to target a player that can help them, that they feel like that can help them get that money and recoup it? I'm sorry, Joe. I'm telling you.
But I just don't understand like what you're getting at with
what
this.
I am saying here is if you got a private market and that private market starts buying into a university for football, and there's a 5-star recruit that is at a quarterback, you mean to tell me, if let's just say one partner has one school, it's not like everybody's getting pieced off here, and he wants Bryce Underwood, you have a hard time for me to think that same guy who has all that equity in that school doesn't also do an NIL deal with Bryce Underwood to say, hey, we're going to do this with you. We're going to do something separate for you to come here to recoup his money back. Joe, it's exactly what Barstool Sports and Oracle did with Bryce Underwood.
But what's different about that and what's happening right now? I don't think that there's
no. That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Private equity will do. You got the house settlement case where private equity is not currently doing that in the open market.
But is that so bad that now I don't want private equity involved? But is the concept of paying a kid to an NIL deal a bad thing?
Hold on.
I'm confused.
You tell me if Yellowwood buys into Auburn and they go pay for a shitload of kids, and let's say those kids don't go to LSU, Notre Dame, Ohio State, you're going to say, what are we all going to say as a collective whole? They're buying a roster. They can't do that.
Well, Texas A&M did that.
Okay,
the first people to do that, and they stunk.
Then you're back at square one for when you had the house settlement case. You're back at square one, are you not?
But that's not what the House. In my eyes, that's not what the whole point of the House settlement case was. The House settlement case was to create revenue sharing.
If you bring in, well, they put a whole clearinghouse behind NIL and
NIL, yes.
So
yes.
I just have a hard time believing that if I put a shitload of money into LSU, as an example, and there's a recruit out there that we want to go get, it's going to be a hard press for me to not spend money NIL-wise to help bring him here to make my money back.
Yeah, but as long as it is approved by NIL Go, the NIL clearinghouse that's run by Deloitte, then that's fine. That goes through. As long as say you're going after a running back and all of the market, the past NIL deals for 5-star running backs with X amount of Instagram followers, there are enough previous deals where they were making $1 million. And as long as you offer him 1.5, something within that range of something that's in a reasonable amount. If you go and offer the kid $20 million, if you offer the kid $5 million, $3, $4 million, something like that, that's obviously going to raise a red flag because it's significantly more than what was typically been given to promote a business by a individual of a similar notoriety.
Mark this show down. I'm telling you, there's going to be bidding wars if private equity gets involved. You think that there's not going to be bidding wars?
But I feel like that's already happening, and I feel like even if private equity didn't get involved, that's not where I have my fear of private equity. I feel like that wherever the money's coming from, the money is still going to be directed at recruits and transfer portal players. That was always going to be the case.
Well, y'all try to convince me that it would settle it.
What it was supposed to settle was not NIL's involvement in the sport. It was supposed to remove the illegal inducements. So when a kid just gets handed money, when a kid gets handed money and he doesn't do any type of marketing, he doesn't do any type of promotion for a business that gave him the money, and he just pockets it and both sides move on. Those are the deals that it's supposed to stop. Because right, you're right. What did is Bryce Underwood out there promoting Oracle right now? No, that's a fucking problem.
No, he's promoting Barstool.
I haven't been following his socials, so that must be the case.
Right. That's my whole point. So you're telling a kid, you're sending a kid a text message saying, post this on socials.
Yeah, but how different is that if I find an actor and I pay him to promote
because
and Joe show?
Text
him once a week. You got to post this.
All I am saying is, if you allow private equity, you're going to have a problem, because if they get denied, let's say that they tried to pay Bryce Underwood that ridiculous amount of money of $15 million. We're spending way too much time on this, but
I mean, I think it's an important conversation. I don't think it's
at $15 million. Let's say that Larry Ellison gives him $15 million, and they disapprove of Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison gets to go to court. And I got to be honest with you, with a new business in the College Sports Commission versus Larry Ellison's attorneys, I'm taking Larry Ellison in court.
Well, to clarify, if Michigan is signed, if all of the teams in the Big Ten, and Michigan especially, they sign the agreement that is apparently still being fleshed out per one of the articles that we read in preparation for today's show.
Yes.
Once those agreements are signed, they can go to arbitration. They cannot sue the College Sports Commission. They can't. Otherwise, they risk serious punishments. We don't know what those punishments are going to be yet because nobody's done it.
Okay, let me retract the word sue. Yesterday, we talked about this. If Deloitte disapproves, here it is. If Deloitte disapproves, the second appeal goes to the CEO, who we'll talk about next. But if he denies it, they have arbitration where they go to court.
Yes.
Arbitration is a form of civil law. So is being sued. So let me back up of the suing part. You have arbitration. So if they go to court, which they will go to court, then you open up a whole nother can of worms.
Well, I don't personally know a lot about baseball and how the contract stuffs work, but if I'm correct, is there not an arbitration process currently for minor league baseball deals when they get up to the majors that they can challenge?
Yes.
If their salary is.
But here's the problem. Here's the problem with your analogy. You are 1,000% correct in reference to Major League Baseball and arbitration. it goes in reference to their salary. It doesn't go in reference to name, image, and likeness. Example, Paul Skeens and Livy Dunn were on the cover of GQ. I don't know if you remember the whole thing in the interview.
Yeah, I do. Paul
Skeens got paid over more from GQ than he did his first year's contract. They can't stop that.
No.
It's a salary-based thing. What we're talking about with arbitration is in reference to the salary, aka TV revenue. Paul Skeens making $5 million from GQ means absolutely nothing to Major League Baseball. It's the Pirates aren't doing anything for him on that. So again, the arbitration in this specific instance, one is in name, image, and likeness. One's in reference to a base salary, which they're not fighting over a base salary. They're fighting over the name, image, and likeness part.
But in essence, the process is still the same. Player, wait. The player is arguing with the College Sports Commission. The player's representatives is arguing that the amount that was offered to him is of fair market value. The College Sports Commission is arguing that it was inflated and it's way outside of bounds of what was fair or not. So it's the same concept of like the MLB. You have a player who's trying to argue that I'm worth more money. This is what other players in my position at this current moment are making for their salaries. Therefore, I deserve the amount that I'm asking for.
Yes, in a salary-based situation. NIL is not a salary-based situation.
I know it's not, but we're just talking about like to prove that the amount was fair, you have to go and prove it in an arbitration setting.
Guess what? We're both going to court on it, and somebody comes out on top. And God forbid Larry Ellison and company in this hypothetical scenario that we painted, that they come out on top. Let me ask, again, we're going way too long on this, but I'll leave this with an open-ended question. What happens if Larry Ellison in this hypothetical situation wins?
Then Bryce Underwood gets to keep his money.
No. In my humble opinion, that means that everyone around the country says, well, shit, I mean, we can spend whatever, take us to court, you're going to lose.
Well, but like
that's exactly what
wait. But that's not exactly truly what it is. The whole point of signing the agreement with the College Sports Commission is to prevent them from like suing and causing problems in an actual court setting, like what we've seen with Tennessee and all these other schools, Diego Pavia, all of those things where they're trying to tie up the NCAA with a million things in order for them to just give up. This is in an arbitration setting that is probably going to be a lot more. So, okay, in this circumstance,
a 45-day window.
In this circumstance, Bryce Underwood is granted, say, to make the number that was denied by the CSC. The arbitration goes through. It says, you know what, we were wrong. You're allowed to take that money. All that says in the future is that number, whatever he made, is now the new fair market value for a 5-star quarterback to make at a school for an NIL deal to represent a media company.
Joe, all right. You think that this is going to get settled like that? And
I don't think it's going to be super simple and bump free. I'm not saying
it's
that.
Going to be very bumpy because everybody else is going to do that.
The whole point of the agreements is to prevent serious lawsuits. That's the whole point of it.
But you're going to have to tell a private equity firm who's got a lot of money tied up into this that they're not trying to make money. They're going to come at you from every which way, brother.
I mean, they can't sue. They can't sue from every which way. They can only get a mandate.
Joe, if they get a mandate that says that if I get a 5-star quarterback every year and I can pay him $3 million, what's to stop a school from stacking them?
Nothing.
Exactly.
What was stopping schools from doing that in the past before NIL was a thing? Schools used to do that all the time. Alabama used to have like
had one 5-star quarterback.
Wait, not quarterbacks. Alabama used to have like loaded up 5-star defensive tackles, defensive linemen.
Yes, but you know what we didn't have?
What?
We didn't have private equity firms fighting over them with millions and millions of dollars.
Well, at the very least,
you had Saban give the guy a Charger, $2,500, and his daddy or mama got a job.
But that, I would argue, is a lot more nefarious than someone getting paid money that's in the view of the public eye.
I feel as if that some believe that shit is not going to come of this. All right.
Look,
right on
I
the head.
will agree with you that I think that there is definitely going to be messiness. Every article that I've read in the past 2 days.
Where's the messiness going to be then? Because it's got to start somewhere. And if you allow private equity to do that, then what are they going to? Then what are we talking about?
I'm not defending private equity, to be very clear here. I think that where private equity ends up ruining the sport is the way that they ruin other businesses, like I said at the beginning. I think that there is going to be a handful of well-respected, seriously, there's going to be a lot of very well-respected universities that have been on the national championship cusp that haven't won one yet that say, you know what, we'll do this. We're going to put our money in. And the direction and the way that the teams are going to be built, they're going to all look like Penn State every single year. Not this upcoming year, but where Penn State just does enough, where they're one of the best teams in college football, but they won't win a national championship.
Well,
that's where the sport sucks. What?
Nothing would have changed then.
Well, I right. To this point, though, they don't have an intention of winning a team a national championship. They don't care about that stuff. They don't. They're going to figure out other ways to make money outside of football.
I'm telling the people up at Happy Valley that you think that they suck.
I mean, they know I've been negative. Everyone's going to want to hire James Franklin. Every private equity firm is going to want to hire James Franklin to go 10-2. That's what that means.
Fair well. Commissioner in college football, this time in reference to NIL. The College Sports Commission has a first-time CEO, and Brian Seeley. How say it again?
Seeley.
Okay, a former U.S. attorney who served a decade with Major League Baseball as their VP of investigations. He also has ties to Tony Pettiti with their time together there in Major League Baseball. Joe, your thoughts on CEO Brian Seeley?
So one quick thing to clarify on the Tony Pettiti relationship. Apparently they did not work closely at all, so they don't have much of a personal relationship. Of course, they made an intention to point that out in order to prevent some of the assumptions that we did yesterday hard to do. I'm sure that they know each other better than they're leading on. That is a completely unnecessary talking point. I think specifically to talk about Seeley, reading the quotes from those involved in college football that knew about this hire and when it went through, hearing the confidence in him makes me feel really good about this. More importantly, knowing what Seeley's role was and his personality is perfect for what the CSC needs. We don't know what this job is going to entail, nor does Seeley probably know what this job is going to entail. It is going to be a learning on the job experience and building out this role for the future of college athletics. But what's most important is that he is an individual whose role at the MLB was to gather information, to investigate issues of wrongdoing, of unfair practices by specific teams, and to act on them with swift punishment. He is the person who was responsible for the Astros sign stealing scandal with the Boston Red Sox.
By the way,
he's been involved in a lot of things.
Well, can we stop right there?
Sure.
He botched the shit out of that when it's in here that we need to talk about. Do you remember what happened there?
Not intently.
Joe, they fumbled it. No one got popped outside of Alex Cora in this whole situation of sign stealing. Hold on. If they're gonna plug that, that's a horrible plug. Because they were literally stealing signs, and in their investigation, they figured out during the World Series that they were doing it, didn't stop it, and no one got punished. He gave everybody immunity. What he ultimately did was pop a VP with the Astros, who was the one helping him. Are they really plugging that now?
Well, no. They also forfeited draft picks.
Yeah, but Joe, they should have gotten much worse than that.
But yeah, there were no player suspensions. But
no, he gave them all immunity. He gave Jose Altuve. He gave Alex Bregman. He gave all of those dudes immunity to rat everybody out, and they did.
A lot of the front office and the manager agent, they were suspended. But you're right. There were no players that were suspended in this circumstance. I mean, I'd maybe argue that, like, I'm not trying to compare these two things. I would kind of hope that if there is some sort of a situation and like a very blatantly clear illegal recruiting situation comes up, I don't know what it is, but like everybody agrees, hey, this was effed up. This should not have happened. I don't want to see a player get suspended. I don't. I want to see a coach. I want to see a school. I want to see those people pay the price. I don't want to see a 19-year-old kid get screwed over.
All right, well, then let me ask you this then. Then what does the Astros – now, Alex Cora got suspended, but they didn't have a choice there. They legitimately didn't have a choice in the Boston Red Sox ordeal with Alex Cora. What's the difference now? If he's going to get put in that situation again, I mean, Joe, with all due respect, I mean, like, ask anybody in the baseball community. It was a travesty that they let everybody pretty much off the hook. Some people got popped. Yes, you're right. Some people got suspended. Joe, they cheated during the World Series. Clayton Kershaw had a 47% or 48% whiff rate on his slider. Joe, they didn't swing at any balls that was a slider. He was a Cy Young that year. He won the Cy Young. They knew what was coming. They cheated, and they didn't get popped accordingly. By the way, their World Series rings and trophy does not go anywhere. We know they cheated.
All right, that's fair.
You know, like, so I'm not trying to come down on a guy that legitimately is in here, but that's a wild flex. It's a wild flex.
So the immunity that was given was because of their cooperation in the investigation.
Yes. Altuve during a World Series game hit a home run. If I'm not mistaken, it was a walk-off. He refused it. When you go and you hit a home run, guys rip your jersey off when you hit home plate.
Yes, I remember this.
He refused to do it because he had the electronic device on him. And he didn't, and nothing happened. So, like, we legitimately know that happened.
The statement from Manfred said that it was difficult and impractical to determine degrees of culpability by players due to the sheer number of players involved. He placed primary responsibility on Lunhow and Hinch, saying that the general manager and field manager are responsible for ensuring that the players both understand the rules and adhere to them. Look, I agree with you. I think that like we're the misstep in this, and we're not a baseball show. We're not an MLB show.
But we're
the misstep is they should have taken away their World Series. Like that, I totally agree with. I don't disagree that I don't think that it was.
And does he have final say?
Handled perfectly. I would assume Manfred would have final say in the situation.
I agree.
The more important thing, that was one of the most complex scandals in sports history.
Yeah.
And this guy navigated through it. You know, success or no success, he still has experience of leading that. Having failures in any career field is what sets you up for future successes. It's not like he gave, let everybody walk away. But I see why you bring that up. It's important to talk about.
I mean,
think his background is important.
Does he fold, Joe? Again, does he fold under this? Like,
I hope not.
And here's the question. You brought up an interesting point, and that's why I asked you really quickly, who had the final say? If Manfred had the say, then we can't put anything on him.
Right. We don't. Well, that's the part that we don't know, and I'm sure that we'll never get clarity on that because Manfred won't say.
Well, one thing that I do like is that he released every bit of his findings. He didn't hold anything back.
No. Mm-mm.
I mean, that's some pretty good investigation skills, though. I mean, but what do you have to investigate in reference to money and contracts? I guess that would be my biggest ordeal here.
Well, I think that what the bigger thing, and it was talked about in the process where he has information presented to him when there's the denial, the approval of deals. I'm sure that for how quick they want to turn these things over in 48 hours, that it's going to be pretty cut and dry. Like you're going to have some pretty like really eye-popping things in order for that process to be drawn out and for it to be a complex decision. I would be more curious on, though, Blake, is if their team discovers somebody put together a deal and had a deal happen that was not reported. How do they handle that? Something that happens underneath the table, or a deal that was reported, but more money was given underneath the table. There's going to be a lot of complex things. There's going to be a situation like this. There is going to be money in the McDonald's bag type of a situation that pops up at some point.
That's still going on. Let's be real.
Yeah, it definitely is. Or
right.
Well, I don't know if it needs to be as hidden.
Well, let me ask you this question. Well, no, it's still happening. Do they have authority to investigate that? If I give a kid,
yes, that's the point.
If I don't report a deal and give him cash, I thought that would be an NCAA thing that they investigate.
No, I think the whole purpose of the College Sports Commission is that they handle all issues related to this. I would hope. I wouldn't want to. I mean, that would immediately undermine the power of the CSC and the commissioner.
I had somebody ask me something the other day, or yesterday. Blake, what's stopping a school who already has 1,000 companies that are doing NIL deals to give $500 a month or whatever, give a pot of money, and everyone getting all these deals for under the $600 mark where they don't have to be reported? So do you understand what they're trying to say here? You do not have to report to NIL Go unless it's over $600. If you pay somebody, like if we had employees and we pay them over $600 in a year, we would have to file that on our taxes, right? Yes. What stops me from paying 20 kids, 30 kids, 40 kids $599 if I was going to give $5,000 a month?
What's wrong with that?
Right, but I do think that there is a loophole here. I wonder because listen, I do think that there was a solution that I talked to somebody today who is a GM or associate GM who said, why wouldn't we get 1,000 businesses to do like 3 $500 deals?
That seems like a lot of work to find 1,000 businesses.
It does, but you also know what it does too? It also keeps you out of the clearinghouse's ordeal, and you don't see anything.
I think that's wishful thinking by that person. That they can find 1,000 businesses.
Joe, how many times have you walked into SEC Stadium and there's 1,000 businesses that have billboards and sponsorships all over the stadium? The shit they want. They're there.
I don't know. I think that would require very complex. It would require more work than if they just fucking followed the rules and then reported it.
That would require football head coaches to follow the rules.
That would create so much unnecessary, so many unnecessary. You're right, but that would create so many unnecessary steps when it would. Because if you're not like really doing anything that's truly that toxic, why would you try to go that route?
You mean to tell me that Nick Saban wouldn't sit a kid down and make him sign 1,000 documents for $500 if he got him enough?
No, that's a waste of everyone's time. Just report the deal.
Nick would make that kid go in there at night at 11 p.m. and sign all of them and not leave until he left. You know that, and I know that.
Like, I would argue anyone who tries to pull that off is dumb. I'm sorry. Let
me ask you this question.
Of time.
If I sign 10 contracts at $500, 10, that's $5,000 a month. But hold on. Stay with me. Hold on. Stay with me.
10 different businesses, though.
Yes, 10 different businesses. If I sign 20 at $500, that's $10,000 a month. I get what you're saying. It sounds egregious, but if I had 40 players, okay, and I did all of that with them, I do think that there's a little bit of a loophole here.
That's fine. That's completely fine.
Right.
As long as there isn't something worse, like another extra bad step. Like,
you can't get to the millions of dollars that way is what you're trying to say.
Well, no. What I'm trying to say is as long as that there's not a singular person that is paying money to these businesses to then pay money to these athletes, because then isn't that money laundering? Am I missing something?
No, it's not. I mean, you have to. They say a payment over $600.
Yes.
One of the articles put a month. I think what they meant in that article is a year. If they meant a year, then everything that I said is null and void.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is what you're saying is like completely fine, and you're correct. If we have a certain number of businesses, if we took the time to do all that, yeah, I think that would create a lot of unnecessary work. But as long as that as long as it's not going to catch any attention. But I'm saying what would have caught attention in a situation is if those businesses, you created businesses or you tried to create fake entities.
Now that's money laundering.
Right. As long as that there's not some sort of fake pathways that are being created where it all goes back to one booster who's paying athletes and trying to pay them a certain amount of money.
Companies. Yes. But
yeah. As long as that something like that doesn't happen, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. My counter to that is, why would you waste the time of going through all of those steps in order to make sure a kid gets his money? Like, I just signed the deal and signed the paperwork.
It would be stupid, but man, in reference to the new commissioner, Joe, I got to be honest with you, it's a wait and see for me. I mean, like, you talk about you being the head of investigation of the Astros and Boston scandal when all that shit went down, and that was the crux of it. I think you got to prove there's some people that you can come in here and do what you need to do. Because Major League Baseball is one thing. Joe, what if you told everybody, if you asked 1,000 people, if you asked Dodger fans today, hey, do you think that the punishment for the Astros during the World Series scandal was enough? All 1,000 would tell you no. He's going to have to come in here and prove it, brother. I mean, I hope he does well. For the sport's health, I hope he does well. But comes a part of time like, hey, man, it's a stain on him whether it's fair or unfair.
I think the wait and see mode is definitely the right approach to have with this. I think that on paper, looking at his background, it's exactly ideal for what this commission needs, which is somebody who's worked in sports, somebody who has worked in investigations, and somebody who also has a legal background. I forget which government department that he was affiliated with before he worked at the MLB, but all of those boxes for me.
Office.
That's what it was. All those boxes are checked for me. This isn't, I think a lot of people see College Sports Commission, CEO, they think Nick Saban. They think that this had to have been somebody that was involved in the sport. That wasn't going to make sense for this. The only other different background that I could have made sense of is if they did go with somebody who had a broadcasting background, like a broadcasting executive, but that still probably wouldn't have aligned that well. It would have to have been somebody in the legal department of Fox Sports or in the legal department of ESPN or something along those lines. I think that this was the right route.
Go in the NFL's route.
I think they didn't want somebody football related. I think that they wanted to have somebody that had a different viewpoint, because everyone in football, a lot of these people think the same way.
I agree with that. I do agree with that. Well, we're going to see. We're going to definitely see. That's for damn sure. All right, Joe, speaking of that, the CEO, do you want to go James Franklin or commit? No, let's go James Franklin.
Yeah.
Joe, speaking of that, James Franklin came out and spoke about the committee in the college football playoff having biases. He states, and I quote, that even if we don't try to have bias, everyone has bias at some standpoint. Joe, a lot has been made of the playoff selection committee and how we should go about selecting playoff teams in the future. Dog, I got to be honest, here's another situation with the wrong human being saying this. Dog, you got SMU and Boise State in the playoffs. Don't tell me about playoff selection. Do not tell me about playoff selection. I am so tired of some of these coaches who do one thing and then speak out the other side of their mouths. SMU and Boise State, and you finally got to a Final Four.
Well, I would argue that the bias that he's talking about in the circumstance that kind of applied here, bias against blue blood, big name programs, big conferences. So in this situation, I think that we could all sit here and argue that there's truth to. They wanted to give the opportunity to SMU and Boise State for proving themselves in different situations. They didn't want to just give Alabama and Ole Miss and the SEC more shots. That's the bias that I think he's talking about. But you are right. And I think that for all of the flawed decision-making and approaches to building this out, I agree with James Franklin in what he elaborated on, which was saying that we need a committee and we need an algorithm. We need a number to suggest which direction we turn to.
I know you hate this person. Brian Kelly came up with the best solution. I'm sorry. It is the best. The RPI solution is the best solution. Hey, you want strength of schedule to matter? Guess what? Do what like baseball does and do an RPI. Play Rudy Poo Tech and your RPI goes down.
College basketball has it as well. I don't know if it's RPI, but they have their own rating evaluation system that affects the decision making of the committee.
Now, RPI is a hard match. It's a hard metric. But Joe, think about this. In college baseball, if teams play like mid-majors or low-level FCS programs, they're all Division I, but you get what I'm saying. Like Grambling. If they play Grambling, if they play Rhode Island, Joe, their RPI goes down. So it influences – no, I'm serious.
I know. I'm just shaking my head.
Oregon went 3 for 4 against Rhode Island, and their RPI dropped. That prohibits teams from wanting to go out there and schedule those opponents.
Right. That's what the whole purpose should be. We need to, and it's 2025. We should be able to have a balanced, capable, mathematical approach to influencing final decision making by humans. I think, and I agree with this, that Strickland brought it up. You brought up Brian Kelly brought it up. Allowing for, and we've seen enough times over, allowing for humans to make the decisions. They're going to allow something outside of their view to influence what they end up going with. It's happened every single year. We can find one team that there was a bit of an odd positioning for that team and it didn't make a lot of sense. Having numbers to back it up simplifies that. There's less arguing. You just say this is what the number said. This is what the rating system said. Can't argue with numbers.
And then as an example, you would have then a committee that could oversee that if there's a rare situation of something, they can say, yeah, we get what you're saying about the RPI, but they dominated everybody. Right? Like, I mean, like, for example, if hypothetically Notre Dame, let's just say A&M and Miami for whatever reason is down this year, and the RPI sucks, and say they're in the 50s again. Well, the eye test would tell you that they're one of the top 12 teams in the country, right? Like, I mean, USC's down. They're still one of the top 12 teams in the country, whoever it is. Joe, I just think we're having a bad situation of who we're putting on the freaking committee.
That's also been an issue.
We're putting mid-major ADs, group of 5 ADs, into the selection committee. You mean that they don't want Boise State in there or SMU? What are you talking about?
That has also been a driving force. I don't know how to fix that part of it though, because like they want to come off as fair, allowing for diverse opinions to be in the room.
Condoleezza Rice was on the committee,
right? Which doesn't make any sense to me. I think that when we're so focused on having so many different opinions from so many different parts of the country and different levels of the sport, that is what ultimately leads to this process being flawed. If there is something to lean on, having a RPI system, having a number-based system, a rating system that factors in strength of schedule, amount of points that you're winning by, all of those things, you have all of that. It makes the decision-making more matter-of-fact. It was too matter-of-fact at one point with the BCS, and it's too, what's the word I'm looking for?
Too human.
That's not what I was looking for, but it's too human at the current moment.
I
know. It's too loose. I know what you mean. It was too loose, but it's too human right now. We need to meet in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, though. From the human perspective, there's nothing that told me that SMU belonged over some of those teams.
Well, they were trying to create fairness. They were trying to create fair opportunities for other teams. And that was the stupid human error that came into the decision-making this year.
Let's just hope that it doesn't come to that again.
No. We
Let's
missed a super chat from Cody, by the way.
All right. So Cody with a $10 super chat says, question, why is transfer portal baseball open during regionals and College World Series, but football portal is not open during playoffs and national championship? Is it not?
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw this earlier and I was thinking, I believe it is. I would argue it's actually kind of funny that they're both open at the most inconvenient times for both sports.
Right. Well, that's been what a lot of the coaches have complained about. Remember, who was the Texas quarterback that went to Duke?
Malik Murphy.
Right, and he transferred during the playoff run.
Yep.
Right.
That was a whole big
issue. You want to know
issue.
why? Because the NCAA is stupid.
I don't know what's going to fix this problem, but this, I think everybody agrees, is one of the next things that needs to get fixed. Because the timing sucks right now.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. I don't know how they fix it because the problem is, Joe, then, you got to enroll in school. And you got to get in classes, and then you can't get in classes. So then what do? Do you make specific exemptions for athletes?
During the summer? I don't know. We've tried to talk about this before, but it's probably the biggest problem.
Probably.
Outside of all the other things that we spent the first 15
There's no
minutes
way
of the
that
show
a
talking
kid
about.
should have to go in the portal during the playoff run. Malik Murphy was put in an unhingeable task.
Yeah. Yeah, he had no choice.
Unless he just waited to the spring.
So in this case for baseball, it would have to be in.
But you can't transfer during the fall in baseball. There's only one portal period.
Well, why couldn't it be like in the summer?
Because the portal closes. Oh, I agree with you. It should. I agree with you for baseball.
Baseball seems fixable. I feel like baseball, you just make it July, and then you can enroll.
They could care less about baseball.
You can enroll in class and show up in August for class, and then whenever the training starts for baseball.
Who are you telling?
See, this one's avoidable. This is stupid.
Yeah, it's very stupid. You can avoid it for football, really. Just make it.
Yeah, and if you made it,
make it a spring portal period.
That's true. There's really not many instances where a kid can actually transfer, like academically in the spring.
No, you have to be in the spring. Hey, you finish your semester. I'm going in the portal in the spring. I'm not playing spring football with you. Sounds good. All right, great. Thanks.
I hope that. I think that's what a lot of coaches want.
Ready? I have a perfect solution. March the 1st until June the 1st.
Right. You can enter the portal. You're still enrolled in classes at your last school. You enter the portal. You sign. You finish the semester. You finish the school year, and then you show up for summer workouts. So you miss spring ball, but that's just going to have to be the downs. I think a lot of coaches would rather a kid misses spring ball than have to deal with the chaos of the transfer portal during a playoff run.
Right. And hey, do it till May the 1st for all I care. I don't care when you do it. Yeah. But, the spring portal period is the best period for football that you can do it in.
Right.
So we'll see. All right. Joe, we're out here. We'll see y'all on Wednesday. Until then, y'all have a good day. Peace.